Zach, remind me exactly what 7 o'clock is. All right. 6:59 according to Apple. Tim Cook says it's 6:59.
6:59 and 49 seconds.
And Tim Cook is never wrong. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's city council meeting. Can everybody please rise and recite the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Councilmember Wood. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Conrad. Here. Councilmember Ritchie. Here. Mayor Carroll.
Here.
Councilmember Donovan.
Here.
Councilmember Swope.
Here.
Councilmember Brewer.
Here. Item 3, reading and consideration of the minutes of the regular meeting of August 13, 2024. Are there any comments or requested changes to those minutes? Hearing none, they are approved as submitted. Item 4, deja vu, consideration of request for a site plan approval of a new Provencal gatehouse located at Provencal and Birchwood. Who is speaking on behalf of the applicants? Names and address, gentlemen.
I'm Steve Brownell at 306 Provencal.
Joseph Wortman, 242 Provencal.
And so first of all, I thank the council for the opportunity to do this again, so soon after they did it before. Thank you very much. And we'd like to thank you for the previous approval. This plan, this revised plan, really is a response to both questions and critiques that we received from council members following the previous presentation, as well as some residents who, though they supported the previous plan, would support this one more. So we decided that taking all of this into account, we would go back and one last time try to chisel center gatehouse location into the easements that we have available, which are somewhat restricted. And we have done that, and the output you see here is the result. So there were several small but key design changes that were made involving dimensions of the gatehouse itself, some revisions to some minor revisions to easements, and squeezing a little bit out of what I will call the buffer zones to the left and right of the gatehouse, just to provide for the passage that we need, feel that we need for emergency vehicles in and out in case of any construction vehicles in and out.
I think it's fair to say the key change was we moved the door to the east side versus being on the north side. In doing that, we would have to have a much step out area, and it's going to be a sliding window. Our train talks to the residents. So moving the door, we're able to shrink the width, and we got the new look. There's a lot more excitement on the street for it. I think it's what everybody wanted for the past couple of years. And I might add too that 32 of the 34 residents have signed on board and are getting the assessments, and we're in a good position. It's taken a lot of work to get there.
What's your construction timing plan, demolition, construction, etc.?
So we hope to,
If approved.
yeah, so if approved, we still have to get building permits and do some engineering. It would be great if we could hit late fall. We're going to meet with the board of directors on the street on October 8th. We hope to have final bids at that point. But if it doesn't work, just because of the winter coming, we would move it to early spring. And I might add too, that design right there was the first design that got submitted. The new one doesn't have the posts on the top, it has 2 windows on the side. It's a little bit more balanced and symmetrical, but graphically it's the right height and proportion that.
Questions?
Gentlemen, I just want to be sure we're on the right page here. From a technical perspective, the last time we approved this, we had some conditions, and I just want to run through conditions here in the public hearing to be sure that we're on the right page, right? You will agree that no visitor demographic information will be collected, as John Galuli mentioned in our last meeting.
That's correct.
Native plantings will be used whenever possible to reduce maintenance and watering.
That's correct.
Proposed lighting fixtures will be downlit, and there won't be any, there will be lots of shielding involved to the extent that's needed.
Yeah, we'll be working for dark sky compliant lighting solutions for this building.
Got that, yep, okay. I noted in the proposal here that due to the new change, you're gonna be saving the 12-inch diameter tree at the southwest corner of the site. You're gonna continue to, you're making sure that you do that?
That is our intent at the moment.
All right, so you'll work with the city if it is necessary to remove that tree or
Or if it's necessary, Councilman, to replant new trees so that we wind up with a wooded area that is similar in design and frankly, if we do that, we'd like better looking trees. The trees that are there now are not particularly attractive.
okay, that would be a good solution. And then I believe there was a letter or a concern from a resident regarding access from public safety, and I'd like to direct this question to Director Hutchins. Are we going to have a plan that's going to enable us to get through the lift arms appropriately if there's an emergency?
Well, that's my question. So it's gonna be attended 24/7. Okay, so worst case scenario, which is all we ever think about, what if it is there an override? Will if somebody calls in sick and they can't staff it?
So some months ago, I think we were asked by the fire department to look at it for width and how straight it was, as well as a transponder that would be in their possession. That would
Okay.
override it. The other thing is this is going to be a simple gate arm with a breakaway.
Okay.
Device on it. I even think the breakaway, now if you put pressure on it, just fold back.
So we will have a transponder. That's really all we.
You will have a transponder and the residents and Dr. Fox, I got an all in cap email today. This is very important because the amount of people, DoorDash and Instacart and Uber that are driving through it
Yeah.
and not stopping. And we also want to be able to get, not the demographics, but we're going to get a picture of the car and the information we can't capture, especially with what's been going on in the area, so that we just have an idea if we need to go back and look.
We have transponders and we're all set.
So think of it as a 3-point system.
Yeah.
There's this transponder that you have,
Right.
there's a guard, and if the guard is asleep, incapacitated, not there because of some, subsequent change in that could conceivably be voted on by the street, we're gonna have a breakaway design so that you can go through with minimal to hopefully no damage to equipment and minimal, little damage, low cost repair to the gate system itself.
So it's like a hinge almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I just want to say that the new design is much more pleasing to the eye and drive by. Everything is much better.
Any city issues, Shane, on that?
Just one thing to bring up, it was noted that there is currently a storm sewer line in the roadway at Provencal Road. The applicant is well aware of that. We shared the plans with Hubbard Walton Clark, our city engineer, and they did not feel because of the depth difference from the gatehouse to that line, it should in any way impede that line. However, as part of any approval, we would recommend that there be a couple of conditions. One is that that line be televised before and after construction of that gatehouse. And second, that that our city attorney would draft a document in terms of a hold harmless agreement in the event that we ever had to have access to that line. Unlikely, but if we did, that would disrupt that building. the city would be held powerless. And I understand the applicant has agreed to those terms.
Yeah, we're familiar. It cost $8,000 to $10,000 to televise this. The board and the street supports the whole efforts.
Okay, anything else from anybody? Anybody in the public have any questions on this item? Seeing no questions from the public comment is closed. What is the wish of council? Well,
I move the city council approve the site plan submitted on August 29th, 2024 by Joseph Sportman on behalf of the Provençal Association. Approval of the site plans will allow for the construction of proposed new gatehouse centered between ingress and egress travel lanes, roadway expansion and landscaping at the intersection of Provençal and Percival Avenue. Conditions are the following: approval of this site plan is subject to the following conditions. No visitor demographic information will be collected by the applicant without prior authorization from city staff. Native plantings will be used whenever possible to reduce maintenance and watering requirements. Proposed lighting fixtures and any additional lighting should be appropriately shielded and down directed so as not to cause any unnecessary light pollution. No additional lighting on the building will be allowed without authorization from the city staff. The existing 12-inch diameter tree at the southwest corner of the site will be preserved to the extent possible as shown on the site plans. If not, the applicant will work with the city to rehab the site with additional trees. The applicant will work with the city's Department of Public Safety to ensure that a plan exists to allow emergency vehicles to enter through the lift gates. City attorney will work with the applicant to draft an agreement. What do we call it, Bill?
Hold harmless.
Home harmless agreement. The city, the sewer lines will be televised prior to construction. All building materials will comply with those shown in the Mosier Design Company's plans, date stamped July 25th, 2024. That's my motion.
from the amendment to say the televised line will be before and after construction.
Before and after construction. Thank you.
Support? Support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Item 5, I have a motion to adjourn as a city council and to reconvene as a board of appeals. Support?
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, the zoning board consideration or request for a dimensional variance for 270 Grosse Point Boulevard. Is the applicant in the room? Mr. Kilbride. Mayor, how are you, sir?
Well, thank you, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Members of the council. So, I know pretty much.
And if you don't, you should get to know it.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your name?
So, my name is Wayne, for the record, my name is Wayne Kilbride, and I'm here tonight representing Mr. and Mrs. Jim McConaughey for their property at 270 Grosse Point Boulevard in the city of Grosse Point Farms. We are asking this board of zoning appeals to find that there are practical difficulties at the property at 270 Grosse Point Boulevard. And because of those practical difficulties, we're asking for a non-use variance to build a garage as an addition to the home on the front yard property. And my understanding, my review, there's the application fees have been paid. I have Mr. Chris Blake here today if there's questions. Dan Jensen is also going to be addressing this zoning board tonight on some public safety issues. And then Mr. McConaughey is here as well, with pictures and some other things. So depending on where we go, it's pretty fast. It's here. We're not long after the concept of zoning ordinances became prevalent, a lot of developed the concept of variances. And that's because and variances are a normal part of zoning because piece of property is rather unique, and so an ordinance doesn't necessarily
necessarily result in a good land use. And Grosse Pointe Farms is sort of a classic example. I'm sure you see a lot of zoning requests here because our community goes back to the 1700, and all these properties were originally leased from the King of France in ribbon farms, and then later were subdivided into summer estates. And if you took an airplane ride over Grosse Pointe Farms, there's remnants of all of that still in our community there. And so Grosse Pointe Farms is a classic example of pieces of property that don't fit exactly within the requirements of the zoning ordinance, and 270 Grosse Pointe Boulevard is a property like that for a couple of reasons, which I will get to now. And as you well know, through your city attorney, I'm sure, each piece of property is deemed to be unique, and so you have to consider the constraints and virtues of that parcel when looking at the question of practical difficulties or a zoning variance. So this property at 270 Grosse Pointe Boulevard presents with a basis to grant a non-use variance. So variances fall into two categories: use variances or non-use. So a use variance is, I want to put a gas station in a residential neighborhood, or I want to put a non-conforming use. This is a single-family residential property. It's new. By that I mean it was only recently built, and it complies with all of the existing zoning. But it's an unusual parcel in that it is a remnant of one of these old ribbon farms. It is a remnant of one of these old summer estates going back hundreds of years, and it's not part of a new subdivision. It's a remnant parcel. It's zoned R1AA, and in addition, is being proposed to this residential use, and that's the question before you tonight. This property, to my point, is about 1.3 acres, about 58,000 square feet. So it's much larger than a typical R1AA lot, for example, over on Tristan Drive or elsewhere. It's a different beast. And currently there's one single family home with an attached garage that was approved and built around 2019. Because it's such a large parcel, the lot coverage for this site is quite small. It's around 5% of the building envelope. And so there's ample land on this parcel of 58,000 square feet to develop a detached garage, for example, in the rear yard. And that would be feasible. You could build in the rear yard with plenty of setback space. You could run a driveway to Christine Lane. You could run a driveway by the side of the house to Grosse Pointe Boulevard. And there's plenty of land to do all of those things. So why are we asking for a variance here? There's a practical difficulty, which is rather obvious, I would say, when you think about it. There's already a curb cut, an apron, a driveway, and a parking area on this parcel. And so to put a new garage in the backyard would mean to put in a new curb cut and a new driveway. And all of that is really unnecessary when you're looking at a 58,000 square foot lot. I looked at the McKenna report, and they point out that there's already an accessory structure in the front yard of this property. There's a garage that was approved by the building department in 2019, which is in the front yard. And so what we're talking about here is putting an addition across the parking court from the existing garage. And there's, as I mentioned, there's plenty of room to do that. And it's simply impractical to build a garage and drive in the rear yard when there's already a driveway, apron, and parking area in the front yard. It's also impractical because it would result in quite a loss of green space and landscape. I think my math's correct. It would require about 1,800 square feet of loss of green space and yard to build a driveway to Christine Drive and build an accessory garage in the rear yard. Or conversely, to build a new driveway from the rear yard through the front yard around the side of the house. And in both cases, it's simply impractical. When you're looking at a 58,000 square foot lot, it's got plenty of room to locate these things. Why would you want two driveways? Why would you want 100 more square feet of asphalt and rooftop in an otherwise green space? In 2019, there was a matter before the zoning board related to the historical property that's since gone. But if you look back at that, the record in that case, pretty much all of the neighbors on Christine and elsewhere opposed putting a driveway in the backyard to Christine. And frankly, from a public safety perspective or others, there's very few properties that are serviced by more than one driveway. And you don't want people, teenagers or others, driving in off the boulevard and wiggling their way through and running out of Christine Drive and things of that nature. It's not a normal land use, it's not commonplace or typical in this community. And it creates another example of why it's impractical to apply the ordinance and require that the accessory structure be put in the rear yard. So if you strictly apply your ordinance, it would unreasonably prevent the mechanics from using the rear yard for its approved and intended use, which is it's got a pool, it's lovely landscaping, it's a beautiful view from Christine and the other adjoining properties. And it's why tear that up when you don't have to if you grant a non-use variance. This lot is unique given its size and especially its depth. It's a very deep lot. And also because it's unique because it has access both to Grosse Pointe Boulevard and to Christine. Again, that's an unusual configuration. None of the surrounding properties to this site are configured similar to the way 270 Grosse Pointe Boulevard. In that regard, it's unique, and the difficulties that this parcel faces are unique to the parcel. So allowing a non-use variance would do a number of things. It would reduce the amount of lot coverage. It would reduce the amount of pavement or asphalt. It would preserve green space. It would preserve trees. It would conform to the usual traffic patterns for ingress and egress property. And it would appease the neighbors' concerns as expressed in 2019 about not having an access drive in the rear yard to Christine Drive. The proposed garage addition will utilize, as I mentioned, the existing driveway, curb cut, parking apron in the front of the property. And the building of a garage in the back of the driveway along the side of the house results in more pavement, a loss of trees, the same lot coverage, same number of parking spots, and seems quite impractical since the property already has a suitable driveway access. The proposed front yard location for this structure otherwise conforms to all of the ordinances applicable in the R1 double area. And that would mean the front, side, and rear yard setbacks and lot coverage requirements are all satisfied. And as I mentioned a minute ago, when this home was originally built, it was approved with an accessory use in the front yard. It has a garage in the front yard. This is not a self-created problem. This is a uniquely large rectangular lot with ample space for addition. It's simply more practical to place it in the front as proposed, not in the rear. And only the granting of a variance, as McKenna noted, only the granting of a variance will alleviate this hardship. In terms of the roof line that's mentioned in the McKenna report, I think McKenna strictly observes that it's the proposed same roof line as the existing garage across the court. And while I think it's frankly just a visual aesthetic matter, but the petitioner would prefer to have the garage at the same elevation, 20 feet, as the parallel property across the way, as depicted in the drawings. So that concludes my remarks. As I mentioned, Dan Jensen, who's going to come up, he's got a couple of thoughts about the public safety issue with a secondary driveway. And then we have Chris Blake and Mr. McConnell here to answer any questions you may have that I did not address. Thank you very
We'll
much.
save our questions till everybody's presented on this, so they may all, you may all have to be up here, but we'll listen to you one at a time and then collectively ask questions. So, yeah, Mr. Johnson can start. Name and address, please.
Ian Jensen, 336 Kirby Road. Good evening, esteemed council members. I'm here in support of Mr. McConaughey's request for a variance to construct an additional garage on his property, 270 Grosse Pointe Boulevard. First of all, the ordinance in question is archaic. It is so old, it was drafted when Lev was in college. Louis had hair, Neil was still a Republican. Seriously though, this was a time when many families only had one car. And this was drafted. There have been several similar variances granted before by council, including 423 Lakeshore, 232 Lothrop, 300 Morass, 425 Kirby, and 407 Terrain. Not all exactly the same variants, but pretty relevant. Of these, two of them, Kirby and Terrain, are much smaller lots than Mr. McConaughey's. The size does matter. Mr. McConaughey's lot is almost 1.5 acres. It sits quite a distance from Grosse Pointe Boulevard. The home was built by Chris Blake, and so will be the proposed garage. It is a beautiful residence that will be enhanced with an amazing motor court. A few years ago, Mr. McConaughey appeared before council and requested a variance for an existing old garage on the rear of the property to make a small residence above it. There were concerns from neighbors on Fair Acres and Christine, and there would be a loss of green space. A new driveway would need to be installed off of Christine to access this project. I believe Lev also voiced similar concerns as far as green space and the drive. Inevitably, the variance was granted over said concerns. The project, however, never came to fruition. Now, after a few years of peace and quiet with the neighbors, it is being proposed Mr. McConaughey do the same thing with his new garage. I'm sure the neighbors on both Fair Acres and Christine will have concerns. I believe all but one neighbor is fine with the proposed garage / motor court. As far as the hardship goes, I believe that fire suppression in an emergency situation, especially a multiple fire response, will be dangerously hampered with the garage in the rear of the home. The closest fire hydrant would be on Christine, which is a closed loop water main. Attempting to run more than one apparatus off this main could result in a water main collapse, requiring the need to stretch lines all the way to Lakeshore. There is a hydrant on Grosse Pointe Boulevard, not far from Mr. McConaughey's driveway, where a line or lines could be stretched down his driveway to the garage, the new garage, for quicker and more efficient firefighting. It would also be much safer and easier to use Grosse Pointe Boulevard as a fire staging area as more apparatus arrives. Most, as you know, most fires of significant size require second and third alarms. The garages will have hundreds of thousands of dollars of expensive cars with accompanying fuel loads. If and when Mr. McConaughey decides to move, I'm sure there are many car buffs that would love to make that home their home, especially with a motor car like that. This is the Motor City, and there are a ton of people in this community that collect cars. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your variance on my garage. I believe my exception turned out beautifully, enhanced the property values of not just my home, but the neighbors as well. Again, thank you.
Mr. Blake, do you have anything to add?
Nope.
All right, so Mr. Gilbride, Mr. Jensen, stay up here in case anybody has any questions. Any questions from the zoning board?
Yeah, I did have a question for Mr. Jensen. You talked about the public safety concern with regard to the fire hydrant. One thing I was also thinking about in placing this garage in the back, because there could be some confusion about if a fire were to start in the garage, whether or not it's at the front garage or the back garage. And how, we're at this address, and could there be some sort of, if you put a garage in the backyard like that and you had another garage in the front, could there be the possibility of confusion on somebody coming out for a run if there was some sort of problem at the garage in the back?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, just around the corner on Fair Acres, on the water, there's a Lakeshore address with no driveway or accessibility from Lakeshore. So we've had issues before where we get a run to that address, and it's on Fair Acres, technically off of Fair Acres, but with a Lakeshore address. Same thing could happen here.
Yeah.
And again, you're talking a dead end street, which is difficult to access with ingress and egress with fire apparatus, especially on that tight little circle.
Yeah. And I just want to extend my thanks to Mr. Gilbride, who made a number of good points about the unique character of this lot. And the practical difficulties of doing something differently. I think one of the things that was a challenge in the last thing was the notion of practical difficulty. Having an extensive, beautiful car collection is not a practical difficulty, but the ways in which it was laid out here, I think you see a number of practical difficulties that we were talking about.
I want to echo, first of all, thank you, Mr. Jensen, thank you, Mr. Gilbride, especially Mr. Gilbride for that background history with it. As you know, we know the previous owners of the original house that was on that lot. But I want to tell you that it is my understanding, my recollection, that this zoning board was very concerned about this, because exactly echoing what Neil had said, to variance justification, Article B, the board can only grant a variance if the above described condition or hardship is not self-created. And that was where our dilemma was. When Blake was building a new house, could not that have been in a rendering for another part of the garage, a larger garage, and because that was not there, now we're going back to the variance. So that was the dilemma. I just want to make sure that it's understood on why we had discussions and why we had maybe some real concerns with this, because we did build self-created. And we did build. It was, the hardship is not self-created, that's what I'm trying to say. So that's just a little bit of background, because Mr. Gilbride, you were not here, Mr. Blake was not here when we were originally discussing it, so I think it's important to point out. We also have not received anything except for one letter of concern, and the letter is said that is, there's no question about it. We reviewed this 2 years ago, and you're right, Mr. Jensen, that it was a somewhat historical, protective garage, remnants way back to the Govertson. And it was this unique opportunity by Mr. Fox, who wanted to renovate it and everything else. Of course, that deal fell through. But there was a little bit of history here that really, I would say, elevated our concerns. With that history being said, I think that you've answered many of those different questions, and I'm trying to go to
Let me say that coming into this discussion, I was initially, opposed to the proposal. However, having read the facts here in the new proposal, having heard what Bill has said, Bill, very good, by the way, very good description of practical difficulty and the exact things that we need to hear from petitioners here tonight. I'm inclined to, to support this. I along with Beth and Neil, were concerned about practical difficulty last time. To the extent to which this was self-created or not. Bill, you've answered the questions. Regarding the height issue, I think it would be silly for us to, make the addition, if we were to pass it, make the additions smaller, because it would look bad from Grossman Boulevard, let's face it. So I would say that based on what I've heard from my colleagues tonight, what I've heard from the petitioner, I'm inclined to be in favor of this proposal.
Anybody else on comment on the zoning board? All right, you guys have a seat. You ready?
So, it's, you know, audience.
Good, I got it. Anybody in the audience want to rise? Come on up, name and address.
Hello,
Hello.
good evening. I am Tim Frazier, still the trustee who is the owner of the property known as 26 Christine Street. You saw my submission. I would state for the record some key aspects. The first thing that I would like to say is the issue is still self-created. The cars were currently that he's looking to put and store on his property is something that was known at the time the building had sold. The self-created topic still resides. The aspect in terms of understanding the constraints associated with that self-created hardship is the topic that I would like to further comment on. I think it's important that as we're creating a storage facility or a second garage, that from the street, every citizen will be able to see 6.5 car garage access. And the reason for the 20-foot access is because 6.5 is not enough. And so he has lifts in those garages. So that's what's also driving the 20-foot garage height. So what we're talking about here, and I think I heard it from Mr. Johnson, is creating a motor court in a residence. And fundamentally, the question becomes, it's not a matter of property accessible or percentage. The question is, if it is R1A, is there an intent for one to keep, he could easily use his back property or front property to store other things besides cars. So is the intent in our residential properties that we should be allowing for significant storage space as part of this? And remembering that now you're setting a precedence for at least 6.5 car garages being available and accessible to the city residents. So let's talk a little bit about the variance topic. McKenna did some bad calculation by my math. Being an engineer, 33% is 5 incremental feet from 15. So it's a 33% increase, not a big deal. Secondly, it does match the other side, which was mentioned. I would like to, however, discuss the practicality and the lack of content relevant to the thoughtfulness, because as we said, we're now coming back after the building was built and adding another building. Should have known that we had the cars when we purchased or built the home. But looking at it from this basis, if I look at that property, and this is where Mr. Blake can go on record as saying, if we maintain those spruce trees, which are currently about 15 feet tall, along the property line, that would help mitigate the sightline concerns that I have, there will not be an opportunity, as it's currently laid out, for medium to heavy equipment to continue to access the back of his property. So the concern about fire access still exists. And it exists from the standpoint of the perspective that I would make, is that when recently constructing the pickleball court and basketball court, he had to access it through Christine. So if we look at this, just accessing the back of the house in the instance of fire, there's going to also be issues because you cannot get equipment through after you build this. So so that's one of the concerns. The other concern I have is we still have a water egress issue on our property through seepage every time it rains hard. All of the water, as discussed in the May 30th meeting, needs to be channeled and funneled to the front of the house through an external storm drain. I don't want any more issues associated with incremental water ingress to a property type that has a elevation difference of 6 feet from my backyard. I spent time today with Mr. Baca to show him that I have in my backyard a very effective water management system through a storm drain and French drain and storm access in order to manage all of the water off of my back house. There is no water that comes from my house that goes onto the side of my house. But yet every rain, I'm still managing this out. So the way I look at it quite simply, a variance is being requested because the owner is choosing not to put in a driveway along the side of the house and put the structure in the back of the house. There's no need for a variance. He's got the land. You heard it from his attorney. There's ample space. The question is, why are we wasting your time and our time to talk about a variance when this can be all self-managed for the self-created issue? So with that, our proposal in the letter that I advised was the same proposal I made when we were in support of access into off of Christine Drive with conditions for the house in 2019. If you look at the 16 other opposing members, we were being very accommodating in every step of this process. But I looked at it quite simply to say, we're going to have a self-created issue because he didn't think about access to the back of the house. Just like he didn't think about access for creating another 4-car or 3-car garage. So I would like, if you're going to proceed forward, one, a confirmation that the water is going to be managed through the front of the house. 2, that those spruces are going to be maintained. And 3, that we are never, ever going to have another discussion about access through Christine.
Any questions from the zoning board, Mr. Frazier?
I would like to get a statement from Mr. Blake that the way it's currently laid out, he can get heavy equipment back through to the back of the lot, maintaining those trees that are currently in place, and also confirm, please, that that large silver maple that is currently on the next to 264, which is the Augustini's, is not going to be removed as a process of this.
We'll ask them when they come back.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the public have any comments or questions on this zoning board item? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Who wants to come up, since I'd like those questions discussed, so I don't know if it's Mr. Blake or somebody talk about what's been going on under construction, tree management, etc. Name and address, please.
Christopher Blake, 20 Orchard Lane, 78 Kirchhoff. I believe that we can maintain the tree line behind the buildings. And I believe that there is access not only on what I would call the south side of the house, but on the north side of the house. So there's the ability to access that property if it's needed. I'll also say it's pretty rare that I build a house in Grosse Pointe Farms or work on an existing house in Grosse Pointe Farms where you have carte blanche access to a rear yard. Very unusual. But having said that, I think that it would be maintained. There would be no problem getting a piece of equipment behind the garage into the backyard, either on the south side or the north side.
In terms of water management, do you have some plans on how to deal with that from this new
You know,
structure?
I'm certainly not prepared to talk about a plan, but I'd be happy to work with Jim to look at that and make sure that that's handled properly. I mean, Terry's not here, or Matt's here. We work hard to try to make sure that we meet the ordinance and don't drain water on the neighbor's property. If there's an issue, it's definitely corrected. So we did change the grading of this property at one point and created a swale along that side. And I guess I was understood that there was not flooding perhaps on that property, but certainly that's something that we could definitely take a look at, figure out a solution to it. It's still a problem. Because it shouldn't be a problem, I agree.
Any other questions, Mr. Blaine, on this item? All right, thank you. Any other questions from the zoning board to the applicant? All right, what is the pleasure of the ZBA? I have a motion, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Dooley. Thank you, sir. My motion is conditional, if you would, if council sees to grant the proposed variances. The first condition is that an external storm line be constructed at 270 Grosse Pointe Boulevard in conjunction with this project so as to prevent future seepage of water to area residents. The second condition, or alternative approved by the administration, fair enough. Yes, sir. The second is that the applicant, if the variances are requested, maintain the tree line that's currently in place. And the third is that the applicant will not request of this body any future access via Christine Lane for construction purposes, staging purposes, or ingress and egress purposes. And my motion follows to this. I move to grant the proposed variances pursuant to section 1503, parent 2, and 1503, parent 3. 1503, parent 2, with regard to 270 Grosse Pointe Boulevard, would grant the applicant a variance for the maximum height limit for accessory structures, which is 15 feet allowable. Section 1503, parent 3, would grant the applicant a variance with regard to an accessory building in the front yard, as this is a proposed detached garage. I find and request that the council find as well that practical difficulty has been established based on the comments of attorney William D. Gilbride Jr. and the information contained within the packet of materials provided to city council in advance of this meeting, including but not limited to issues with regard to reduced lot coverage, preservation of green spaces, no access to Christine Lane, things of that nature. I also move that these variances be granted on the basis that it would not, the requested variance, produce an increased population density, nor would it require additional government resources beyond previous and planned conditions required of all. I also requested the city council find that the motion be granted on the basis that the massing and scale of the proposed building are similar to those of surrounding buildings, with no real, other than the one comments made this evening, objections being filed with regard to the proposed motion. Finally, the variance will not substantially interfere with or injure the rights of other persons or property who is affected, whose properties would be affected by the proposed variances. For those reasons, Mr. Mayor, I move that the variances be granted. That the proposed variances are in harmony with and serve the intent and purpose of the ordinance I previously cited and that we're considering with regard to 270 Grosse Pointe Boulevard, that the variance would result in substantial justice being done. The variance would not substantially interfere or injure the rights of persons whose property is affected. Valid motion, Mr. Burgess?
Could I make a friendly amendment?
You can ask the movement, yes.
Movement, that we find that the practical difficulty is not self-created.
Fair enough. I accept your friendly amendment. Do I have support?
Support.
Okay, Mr. Zicki, roll call, please.
Councilmember Wood.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Conrad Wilbrady.
Yes.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Yes.
Mayor Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Donovan.
Yes.
Councilmember Schultz.
Yes.
Councilmember Wu.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Do I have a motion to adjourn this zoning board of appeals and to reconvene as the city council?
So moved.
All in favor of adjourning as ZBA and Reconvene as city council, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, consent agenda. Would anybody like any particular item removed from consent agenda for individual consideration? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted?
Motion.
All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, reports. We have the August 2024 public safety report in front of you. Mr. Reside, other business.
Just want to mention, now that we're the end of summer and really the end of the heightened season at Pier Park, it's a little recap of some of the things I think that were shared with the park committee this past week. Really was a great year at the park. We had participation on our programs throughout the spring and summer. Our swim team had 198 participants, which is the largest group that we've had in more than a decade. The regular season was successful for the team. They had a 5-1 record. And then the Grosse Pointe Farms.
What did we lose to?
I think it was the Woods, I believe.
We were kind of low.
I said, I gotta bring home the trophy next year. Yes, you gotta bring-
That's a word.
Bring back the trophy, but, and then, the Grosse Pointe Farms actually hosted the swim meets this year at Grosse Pointe, Parks Park. And, hopefully, the not too distant future, when it's our turn again, we'll be hosting that swim meet, at Pier Park. Regarding really the end of the year, and the end of summer bash, that continues to really grow in popularity. We counted 2,600 visitors coming into the park that day, between fishing rodeos, dedication of the pickleball courts, all the events, and really highlighted by the fireworks, which they're coordinated again this year. So it's a great event, and a great end of the year. We're looking forward to this Thursday. The Grosse Pointe Farms Foundation will be hosting their annual cocktail party with proceeds going towards the construction of a new pool. So just want to highlight that.
Awesome. Mr. Mayor, very briefly, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to chair the Parks and Harbor Committee. And I want to thank Council members Conrad Wilberding and Sirocco for all their assistance this year. I did make a list, and I won't go over everything, but that City Manager Reside, it was a great year at the park. 84,000 visitors through the park so far this year, up from last year. We're up by almost 5,000 visitors already. The way in which the park is being taken care of in terms of lawn cutting, contracted out, in terms of the beds being contracted out to someone different, has absolutely been fantastic. The lifeguard culture, we had a problem before with retaining lifeguards for the entire summer, that some would leave early. We don't have that problem anymore. Lifeguards are easy to work. There was a very good culture described by all in terms of the lifeguards. Chris Galitis and Michelle have done a fantastic job. They have increased communication amongst the swim team as well, which has been a huge relief for swim team parents who expressed concerns of that a couple years ago. We're glad that's working out. Pier 36 was a hit in terms of the snack shack, so to speak. For this year, we're very much, we got some good ideas. The rental in terms of the Pier Park accessory buildings and the like has been great. Every weekend booked. Pickleball courts have been a fantastic, Shane, thank you, and to the foundation again. Sincere thanks, those are all great, but we had a great meeting. We're having several more, and we appreciate the input of those who serve not only on the committee of Parks and Harbor, but on the pool committee, 25 people. We've had almost 100% turnout for all of our meetings. It's been great. A lot of input. Yes, thank you. Sorry.
No, sorry at all. It's great information. Yeah.
I would like to make a comment, and would like for our resident, David Tesler, to come up, please. Not only just to congratulate you on your appointment to the Elections Commission,
Well, thank you.
But I want to share a little bit about about Mr. Testa with our council and the community. I moved here before he did, and when he moved in, like I did, he hit the ground running. He is an outstanding resident, an outstanding neighbor. He helps everyone in the community, the surrounding community. It doesn't make a difference what it is, whether it's little children riding their bikes and needing assistance, or the elderly needing assistance with them pulling their refuse cans in. He's been a dear friend to me and to so many others. I just want to thank you for being involved. And I've encouraged you to get involved. I remember when you first came to me and said, Sierra, I'd like to get involved. And I put some ideas out there, and then I discussed them with Shane, and I discussed them with Derek. And so it is a pleasure to welcome you to at least one committee.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much. And other than that, you have nearly perfect attendance. Exactly the way I put you on the council payroll. I forgot one thing. I want to recognize and thank, we lost the motor carrier officer this week, who wasn't a resident of Grosse Pointe Farms, but he was a resident of Grosse Pointe City on Roosevelt. Daniel Kerstetter was a fantastic individual. I happened to be in my office and heard a commotion. I sit over the ramp of 375 to 94, 70 north, and saw several police vehicles and an ambulance and several police vehicles behind it the other day. I could sense there was an officer in crisis. It was him following the accident on 75. He's only been a trooper for like 2 years. He changed occupations. I think he was an agent before. 3 young kids, a great wife. What a tremendous loss, and we appreciate his service and hope his family does well in these very difficult times. Anything else?
We'll be handling the funeral on Friday in St. Paul, 2 o'clock. It's gonna be massive. Probably coming from tri-state area. So likely, yeah, because it's a state police officer, so. That's Friday at 2 at St. Paul.
Just one more comment on the pool and the foundation. The bank account is up to $490,000. They raised the $250,000 that are earmarking for the pool, for all the seed work going on. We know it's going to be a big bond issue, and it's going to take a couple of years to get going, but you need that seed money.
Oh, no, we don't need bond money. We're gonna raise it from private donations from the community.
All right.
So-
Well, we're counting on that. But again.
Shameless plug.
Yeah. But the foundation has taken a major step in the pickleball courts, the fire pit, the gazebo, and it's just a great organization to be around, and they're continuing to look for more and more things to do in the park. So hats off to the foundation, and you can do our parties Thursday night, and we're all going, right?
Yes, you can come donate some more.
That's right. Thank you.
Anything else?
I would just add that with that, every council member here is putting significant contributions.
Thank you for the contributions to everybody as council. Anybody in public? Well, I will just close with this. It's, I was just talking to Sierra, it's like, I thought you've been on council forever. And I look at the city when I think about the park, what the original community building looked like. When I joined, it looked like someone dropped the Baraz Chase Bank right in the middle of our park with orange brick. Oh, they're coming back. Don't worry. I'll let that be on record. I have no problem with that. But the thing said, that park is transformed. So thank you to Parks and Harbor and everybody. And it's just, it is remarkable what has happened in 20 plus years. That place looks so different than it did in 2001. So it's great to the administration and the hard work that they all put in, and to my fellow councilmen and women who are on that committee and on the foundation. You guys do great, and so obviously the whole administration does. So everybody have a great September. For the rest of it, we'll see you in October. But if you are out there watching, you can come to the event on Thursday night and help us raise some more money for our foundation to make our parks even better.
Right.
All right.